Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. It's Paulie, Esther here. And well, I don't know about you, but I'm still a little bit stunned from that announcement yesterday that Resident Evil is coming to Dead by Daylight. Y'all just blew up the comments on my YouTube, blew up all my social media with all of your thoughts. And now it's time to take a harder look at this trailer and see what we think could be coming for this chapter in June. What does the future hold? Okay, but first, in case you missed the trailer yesterday, let's play it one more time. Here we go. So starting out with the trailer reactions, many of you pointed out that, hey, that's Felix on the hook. And at first I just kind of discounted it as Felix's voice, which, as we know, the voice is one of the last things that's put into any chapter. We've seen public test build over public test build where characters reused voices from other survivors, and the voices were the last thing put in. So the fact that the person on the hook was using Felix's screams didn't really mean anything to me. But then when I looked a little bit harder, it's hard to discount that suit, that it looks exactly like what Felix wears on his base model. So I certainly can't rule out and say that isn't Felix. So it may very well be Felix. Now, why would Dead by Daylight do this? Use Felix without showing us that it is Felix? Well, I would say they don't want to confuse the Resident Evil fans by showing us all that it's Felix and having everybody who is not familiar with Dead by Daylight looking at this guy in the three-piece suit on the hook going, well, who is that? So this way they're able to introduce to us, hey, Resident Evil's coming. Focus on that the Umbrella Corporation badge on the ground. Who the survivor is doesn't really matter. They keep their cards close to their vest who the survivor or survivors are going to be, and at the same time get that message out that Resident Evil is coming to Dead by Daylight. Even had some people say, well, the point of view on the ground is fairly low, so perhaps that's one of the monster killer characters from Resident Evil, which is entirely possible. And then they said that the closure of the eye is similar to some of the Resident Evil killers, but I think that's probably the fog rolling in. That's my interpretation of it anyway. So what can we focus on in this trailer? So when we see this Umbrella Corporation charm drop to the ground, it's surrounded by patches of clover. Some of it is 3 leaves, the typical. A lot of it is 4-leaf clovers, honestly, which, as we know, 4-leaf clover is a mutation. So there's a lot of mutation going. Are you telling me there's mutations going on in Raccoon City? So the clover meaning itself, there is a clover key or a club key that you have to get as Leon in the Raccoon City Police Department in Resident Evil 2. This could be a big clue that Leon is going to be the base survivor in the Resident Evil chapter of Dead by Daylight. Now, I also want to focus on this one thing that Matthew Cote says at the very end of his Dead by Daylight presentation on the Resident Evil showcase yesterday. Check this out.
I suggest you get some practice in before the chapter comes into the fog. Because look, you have 2 choices here. Kill or be killed. It's your call.
So that line that Matthew delivers there is a nearly direct quote from Claire Redfield from Resident Evil. I believe she utters this line in Resident Evil Veronica, but if you go to the fandom wiki for Resident Evil and look up Claire, this is like an audio clip that they have of her character right there at the top that you can play it. Here, I'll play it for you now.
Look, you've got 2 choices here. Kill or be killed. Your call.
So it's right there. So is that a clue that Matthew's trying to tell us that Claire is going to be the survivor for the Resident Evil chapter in Dead by Daylight? So as far as this Resident Evil chapter goes with Dead by Daylight, I do believe they are going to take the same approach that they did with Silent Hill, where the chapter is going to be an amalgamation of several different Resident Evil games. I also feel like, since it is the 25th anniversary of Resident Evil and Dead by Daylight wants to recognize the roots of the game, that is probably going to be the early material for Resident Evil. I think that that's something that most people are familiar with, the fact that there have been remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3, that those games appeal to multi-generational levels of players, and it has the broadest reach. So I really feel like the chapter is going to focus on the early Resident Evil games. That doesn't mean that there can't possibly be skins for more recent characters, certainly, but I think the base is probably going to have to do with the early games of Resident Evil. I also believe that this could possibly be the first chapter that has multiple survivors and multiple killers in the base. So we'll see what happens, but I really feel strongly that at the very least there will be 2 survivors and a killer. I believe there's going to be a male and a female survivor. What they will be as the base default that comes with the chapter remains to be seen. I have flip-flopped back and forth whether it will be Jill and Chris or Claire and Leon. And I think that those clues with the Matthew Cote quote for Claire and the clover leading to the Clover Key puzzle for Leon leads me to believe that we're going to lean in that direction, that it's going to be Leon and Claire as the base. And then there will be obviously a slew of legendary skins that you can lay over the top of these male and female characters. You'll be able to get the Jill and Chris then, or Ada Wong, Carlos Oliveira, and on. You're going to be able to add many, many different characters as legendary skins to these base characters. That's my belief anyway. That's what I think is going to happen. The fact that the Resident Evil Netflix anime series stars Leon and Claire, and they shot a live-action movie that's coming out next year, also has Leon and Claire. Jill and Chris are in that too, I believe. But these are going to be your focal characters that are going to be in the game. Now, like I said, I could flip-flop back and forth with either Jill and Chris as the base or Leon and Claire as the base. It's a hard decision, but I'm going to go with Leon and Claire as the base characters that come with the chapter. With the trailer, I also had people telling me that they think that hooking takes place in the lobby map, that it isn't even a map that's going to be in the chapter, which is possible, I suppose. But, wow, are we really not getting any information at all from this teaser trailer? It could be. So what maps would we want to see for Resident Evil? If we are going back to the roots, it's probably going to be something like Spencer Mansion, or maybe the Raccoon City Police Department. Raccoon City Police Department makes the most sense to me, and I think that's where I'm leaning towards a map location. Also, you hear a lot of zombie noises or hordes. Some people said that, oh, those are just Victor noises or the blight that are used to mimic zombies. I think probably that we're going to have a singular focus killer, and it's not going to be zombies. I think they may be taking the approach here like they did with Silent Hill, where there's going to be ambient zombies moving or tucked away in spots where they can't actually hurt the survivors, but they're going to set the aesthetic for the map. In the same way that with Silent Hill, we had the tormented souls in the cages there that are rattling around. They can't actually do anything but provide ambiance for the map. And I think you may see the same thing with this Resident Evil map, that there will be zombies that make some movements or some noises, but they aren't going to actually be the enemies in the game. Could be wrong, but that's my feeling on it. Survivor predictions are really a no-brainer. With the ability to put in these legendary skins and change a person to another person, sky's the limit. Pretty well anybody in the Resident Evil cast of characters can be skinned over one of these body types and inserted into the game. Now, killers is a very much a different proposition, a little bit more hard to predict because just the abilities from one killer type to another would vary. And so what do you think we'll see here as killer? Now, before we go any further, I want to make sure that I talk about this here with this banner of the crossover between Resident Evil X Dead by Daylight. I don't want to go down like this 2 years in a row, so I want to make sure that I note this. Last year, we had the 4th anniversary logo for Dead by Daylight, where 4 looks like Pyramid, and the 4 was like the shape of Pyramid Head's face, and it was staring us all in the face, and I dismissed it. I want to make sure I don't do that this year. I know there's a big X here, and this is typically the way that just video game companies signal that there's a crossover, like Smash Bros and things like that. This X doesn't really mean anything, but just in case it does mean something, I want to make sure that I point out that there's a big X in the middle, and this could in fact signal that Mr. X is going to be the killer in the Resident Evil chapter. So for killers, there's a few different directions they could go into, which is why I would love to see this Resident Evil chapter be the first chapter that has multiple types of killers as well as multiple survivors in it. Now, for types of killers, I don't just mean like reskinning the same killer with the same powers. I would like to see two very different styles of killers with different powers. For example, you could start out with a monster type killer. This would be your licker or your hunter, a visceral animal type killer that would be similar to, say, the Demogorgon. Maybe they could get some more use out of that Demogorgon model that they have from Stranger Things and convert that into a licker or a hunter monster from Resident Evil. Next category, you would be looking at a tyrant. So this is going to be your Mr. X or your Nemesis. Now, if I'm being real, and I think that Dead by Daylight wants to please the most people, you're probably going to be looking in this tyrant area for the type of killer. I think that's something that most people would want. So I think that those are the most iconic killers, bosses for Resident Evil would be Nemesis and Tyrant. And perhaps you could have one of these and you could reskin them as the other. It's a little weird because I don't think they're going to give Nemesis weapons like the rocket launcher or the flamethrower. Maybe the flamethrower. But most likely they'll have the tentacle attack or maybe a dash attack for Nemesis. And maybe you could put a legendary skin over that and have Mr. X be a variant, as Nemesis is the base. Mr. X would be a legendary skin add-on. Not too sure. Then the third category would be your mutated human. These are the William Birkins, the Albert Weskers of the Resident Evil world. Normal people who, under certain circumstances, wound up subjecting themselves to mutation for power and became the final bosses that you would have to battle in some of these games. And the early mutations, they're mostly human, except they would have an arm that could be used as a weapon. It had been subjected to that mutated growth or infused with metal, things like that. Those would be your third category of killer that you could have. So there's a lot of options here. I don't really know what direction Dead by Daylight would go in. If I had my choice, I think I want Nemesis as number one with, again, an ability to reskin as Mr. X in that tyrant mode. Second choice would be Hunter Licker style monster killer. And then third choice would be mutated humans. I think Wesker's like main villain in like 3 Resident Evil games. Not sure. I'm not real familiar with the Resident Evil property, so I'm playing a little bit of catch up here with all of you. So if I have shown any of my ignorance in this video here today, I apologize. So obviously lots of things can change between now and June, but as of this very moment, I'm pushing all my chips in on Claire, Leon, Nemesis, and the Raccoon City Police Department for the map. But what do all of you think? Time to lob the tennis ball back over the net and have you return it. Come back at me and let me know what you think about any of my theories. Do you think that I am completely off base and it's going to be something more modern in Resident Evil? Or do you think that I'm on the right track, that it's going to be rootsy, early Resident Evil stuff? So that's all I have for you today. As always, thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And make sure you take care of each other in and out of the fog. Stay safe, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.